Hi and welcome to your Sound Desk recap session. It is beneficial that you listen to this as it will take you through what a sound desk does, what are the different dials and the different modes within the sound desk. You need to use this information when adding the information to your slides. Okay, straight away what we have here is a picture of highlighted the line in on the desk. There are up to 7 or 8 line-ins. Basically, that means anything that feeds into the desk. The example being here is that this line in here is for a microphone. We know that because it has an XLR input, a female end, at which you insert the male end of the XLR cable into this here. Next to it in the line 3, we also have jack inputs. Again, these can be used for any instrument, including guitars, keyboards, any instrument that you want to actually feed in. The green arrow here is highlighting the high, the low, and the reverb dials on the sound desk. The high will either increase or decrease the higher end sound of a track or a voice. The low dial will either increase or decrease the lower elements of a track or a voice. For example, you're playing a dance track, you want to increase the bass beat in that track, you would therefore increase the lower dial towards the +15 mark. The final dial is blue, and this blue dial is a reverb dial. Reverb basically means a delay on the voice, an echo on the voice. It is also an echo on an instrument, and so therefore it sustains the note after it has been sung or played. The level of reverb towards the 10 mark means that 10 means you're going to get more reverb, 0 is none. You will also note that for all of these there are little arrows on top here. They are the recommended level for reverb, low and high. Basically, the average that they should be set at. The green arrow here looks at the actual level volume for that particular input. At the moment it is set to 0. But what you'd be looking to do is you would increase that whilst playing the track, the instrument, or singing through that line. 0 being nothing at all, through to 10 being the loudest it can be. Again, there is an arrow halfway round which roughly suggests the right or recommended level for that line in. Over on the right hand side here we have many different functions. To draw your attention to the start of this, we have the speaker line in. We have a left and a right speaker. Again though, however, please note that the left and right is in response to where the performer is or where the audience will be listening, not you as a technician. Also here we have a USB input. That lead can go from here all the way through to your iPad or your iPhone or any other device that could be a USB connection. You could therefore play backing tracks through that. For example, the volume for level 8, i.e. your USB, is down here and you would adjust that accordingly. On top of that, what we have here are the limiter values. This basically tells us whether a track, an instrument, or anything like that is going to be played well. Green should always be the case. Yellow, it should touch into the yellow. It should never really have the red light on permanently. That means it's being played too loud, and you could potentially break the speakers or hurt the audience's ears. We also have, up at the top, a monitor output. Monitor output is used for plugging headphones into, for example. You might plug headphones in to set up a track as a DJ prior to the track being played. You have a monitor output level. Again, that's the volume basically that's going through the headphones. If you want reverb on, and we've discussed that previously, you would need to press the reverb on button. When pressed, it will turn a colour and shine. And you can opt through the blue master reverb button, whether you want hall, plate, room or echo. Plate is quite a dead space. Hall, room and echo basically describe themselves. You would note as well within each of one of those you can have quite a small insignificant sound of reverb all the way through to something quite dramatic. The more dramatic something is, the longer the echo will happen for on stage through the speakers. Down at the bottom here we have two master dials. The red one is the overall volume for whatever goes out. That overrides everything along here from 1 to 8. You can set and balance the different things coming into the desk, but the overall volume will be controlled from this red dial. Again, note the arrow here, there is a recommended average sound of volume that should come out. The EQ basically looks at the different styles. The equalizer basically tells us whether we want speech. You would use speech for public speaking, for addressing an audience. You would use music in order to play music or gigs through. Or however, if you wanted to increase the overall depth of a piece being sung, being played, you would use the bass boost on the right hand side. And so to recap what we've just discussed, here we have the speaker inputs. They go directly to each individual speaker, of which there are 2. Here we have the USB channel. This plugs in the USB lead from an iPad or an iPod or an iPhone, basically anything that can be connected via the use of a USB. Here we have the EQ. The EQ is used for the overall presets of how something sounds. At the moment it is set for music. The reverb button on the left hand side controls the reverb for that specific line in. That could be a voice via a microphone or a musical instrument. The red dial on the right hand side and circled here is the master volume. That will control the output of everything on the desk. The blue dial here is the master reverb and has presets. Therefore you can control how the sound sounds on stage, whether it is hall, plate, room or echo. And here we have the limiter. So basically these are green, yellow and red lights that flash to tell us how loud something is. The more lights you have on, the more distorted the sound would be and uncomfortable for all those listening to it. And therefore your average lights on there that should be used when you are balancing and mixing should be definitely green and some yellow. And finally, what we have here is the monitor output. And that includes headphones, for example, and setting up a track. And you have a monitor out volume, which is the white dial situated at the bottom there. Let's move on to speakers. There are 2 types of speakers, passive speakers and active speakers, and we will get to active speakers later. Passive speakers have no inbuilt amps. They have no individual power, and so therefore you need to run an amp to these. You also need to make sure that they are plugged into the amp for them to work. Passive speakers are lightweight. They're lightweight, simply put, because they do not have anything other in them other than the possibility that they will play the sound. They will not work unless they are attached to an amp, and therefore the amp being attached to the musical source. Passive speakers would ideally be used in theatre rigs. For example, at Priestley College, we would use passive speakers of different sizes in the rig, in the ceiling, in the hall. And the reason for this is they are lightweight and therefore can be attached easily using the taller scope. Equally, the balance of such speakers and what you run through those speakers is connected via the amp and therefore the desk. And the sound desk would always be situated with the technical support in the theatre. Therefore, if anything goes wrong, or you want to troubleshoot, or you want to balance individual things throughout the show, that is done at ground level with the technician. This makes the whole process a lot easier. Active speakers, on the other hand, do have an inbuilt amp. They plug straight into devices, and they need to be connected via an IEC lead. And the IEC lead is what we also know as a kettle lead. So an active speaker needs power but has the amp inside it already. This makes an active speaker slightly more heavier than a passive speaker, and you would use an active speaker for gigs in small venues. Put basically because what you can do is you can use active speakers to literally plug something into it. Very easy to do when you're trying to set up an intimate gig in a small venue. Yes, they are heavier, and therefore you would try not to hang these from height in a rig, in a ceiling for example, because you would struggle to A, rig them, and B, to actually get them up a ladder or taller scope in the first place. Active speakers are also found commonly in households, whether that's with surround sounds, whether that's hi-fi systems, basically anything that's used where the speakers have the ability to plug sound directly into them. The best thing that you can do at this point is to look at and combine the two. So for example, tell me why you have to use an active speaker. Tell me why you have to use a passive speaker. And you also need to tell the examiner what each does. For example, the passive speaker used with a sound desk, an active speaker used for an input directly into the speaker. I hope this confirms your knowledge and understanding of both desks and speakers. All you need to do now is put that information into your written work.